Still. Good morning. This morning, may we be reminded once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to one another. Come now and let us worship together. Oh, Mary, would you like our chalice this morning? Thank you. Those of you at home are invited to light your own chalice now. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lit the flame within us and the community. Thank you, Mary. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing along with us as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. Please stand, embody your spirit, and sing the opening hymn, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door, hymn number 1. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us this morning. Our UUCC sanctuary sits on land that the Salinan and Chumash indigenous peoples historically inhabited. We honor their contribution to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to gather in faith on their unceded territory. Let us respect their legacy and protect their vision as we occupy this sacred space. As Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation run by the democratic process. We invite speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest that connect with the UU 7 principles. Today's service centers around the 4th principle. We affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. My name is Janet Cooper, and I am your worship associate for this morning's service. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning. If you're not on the mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. Members and friends, please check out what's happening. The e-blast sent to you every week. This is a great way to keep up to date with our latest news. And if you wish to see this or any past Zoom services, the recordings can be found on the UUCC website and on Facebook. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise to which we aspire. Let us now recite the affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. If something needs more explanation, contact the person after the service. If you'd like to make an announcement, please raise your hand. When Randy or I call your name, please step up to the podium or unmute yourself, then speak. So do we have any, Chris?
Board meeting tomorrow, 3 o'clock here. And then also next Sunday after the service, there's a conversation with the board. And you can bring up any questions or issues that you have, okay?
It's going to happen whether you like it or not. In fact, 2 of our cast members are sitting right amongst us. Oh, 3. I'm sorry, 3. So anyway, they'll be there. Hope to see all of you there as well. Okay, so the follies this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the following weekend, you can get tickets at the chamber or at the door or online at the Lions Club of Cambria. Anyway, hope to see you all there. Bye.
Okay, and Randy, I'll let you, you're going to do Zoom line, right? Yeah.
Okay, Andy has an announcement. Go, Andy.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just a reminder that the men's group will meet tomorrow. It'll be an all Zoom meeting because those of us with the key to the sanctuary are all out of town. So we'll meet by Zoom. I sent out the Zoom link for you all. See you then.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Janet. Okay.
Announcing the men's meeting by Zoom. Yeah, tomorrow. Okay, thank you. You're better hearing than I have. Next week, Andy Fagan will read Standing on Holy Ground, written by Reverend Suzelle Lynch. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life. Express a gratitude, or perhaps offer an acknowledgement. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and concerns which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. The first reading is a responsive reading, number 602 from the Gray Hymnal, written by Lao Cha, entitled, If There Is to Be Peace. If there is to be peace in the world, if there is to be peace in the nations, if there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. Let us enter into a place of peace and serenity where you are one with your spiritual being. Be at peace within your space, where the absence of all that is temporal is its most cherished gift. Let us enter the stillness. May we find the compassion and empathy we need to strengthen relationships. May we find ways to love each other well. May we not judge or condemn, but rather build a beloved community. The second reading is titled Different Ways to Pray, written by Naomi Shihab Nye. There was the method of kneeling, a fine method, if you lived in a country where stones were smooth. The women dreamed wistfully of bleached courtyards, hidden corners where a knee fit rock. Their prayers were weathered rib bones, small calcium words uttered in sequence, as if this shedding of syllables could somehow fuse them to the sky. There were the men who had been shepherds so long they walked like sheep. Under the olive trees, they raised their arms. Hear us, we have pain on earth. We have so much pain, there is no place to store it. But the olives bobbed peacefully in fragrant buckets of vinegar and thyme. At night, the men ate heartily, flat bread and white cheese, and were happy in spite of the pain, because there was also happiness. Some prized the pilgrimage, wrapping themselves in new white linen to ride buses across miles of vacant sand. When they arrived at Mecca, they would circle the holy places on foot many times. They would bend to kiss the earth and return, their lean faces housing mystery. While for certain cousins and grandmothers, the pilgrimage occurred daily, lugging water from the spring or balancing the baskets of grapes. These were the ones present at births, humming quietly to perspiring mothers, the ones stitching intricate needlework into children's dresses, forgetting how easily children soil clothes. There were those who didn't care about praying, the young ones, the ones who had been to America. They told the old ones, "You are wasting your time." Time? The old ones prayed for the young ones. They prayed to Allah to mend their brains, for the twig, the round moon, to speak suddenly in a commanding tone. And occasionally there would be one who did none of this. The old man Fauzi, for example. Fauzi the fool, who beat everyone at dominoes, insisted he spoke with God as he spoke with goats, and was famous for his laugh. Please stand if you are able and join in singing The Fire of Commitment, hymn number 1028.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment
Today's sermon is titled The True Believer, written by Marilyn Sewell and to be delivered by our UUCC president, Dolores Miera.
All right. The Reverend Marilyn Sewell, Janet and I attended one of her services in Portland. And she's very well known. She took the congregation there, the Unitarian Church of Portland, from 600 to 1,200 people. God, right? Okay, she's retired now. And she has an award-winning documentary that I couldn't find, and it's called Raw Faith. If you ever want to figure out, let me know how to get it. Okay. So she delivered this on October 30th, 2005. Okay, what's that, 18 years ago? Some of you know, she said, that I spoke at the Multnomah Bible College yesterday at their symposium. It was entitled Building Beloved Community, Calling for an End to the Culture Wars. I had accepted the invitation casually, and then as the time of the conference grew near, I began to think, Multnomah Bible College, who are these folks anyway? So I gave a call to the organizer, Dr. Paul Metzger, who's a professor at the college. I asked Dr. Metzger, tell me, what are the students like at the Multnomah Bible College? What are their basic beliefs and their religious orientation? Well, there are various beliefs, he said. Well, there must be some patterns, I answered. I need to know who my audience is. Let's start with salvation. What do most of the students and faculty believe about salvation? Well, Dr. Metzger responded, I would say that pretty much all of them would say that if you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior, you would be saved. Of course, there is some question about those people who have never heard of Jesus, whether they would be damned. I paused. Now, let me get this straight, I said. Let's take someone like Gandhi. Gandhi was very well informed about Christianity, and he knew all about Jesus, and yet he decided to remain a Hindu. Are you saying that Gandhi is in hell? There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few seconds, and then a hesitant answer. Well, I would have to say that yes, Gandhi did remove himself from God, Metzger answered. So you are saying that Gandhi is in hell? You don't really believe that, do you? And the conversation went downhill from here. Again, this was written in 2005. Homosexuality, it's a sin. Abortion, it's a sin. So I said to Dr. Metzger, I am concerned about how I'm supposed to bridge the cultural divide. The cultural divide is huge. Well, there's one thing we surely come together on, said Dr. Metzger. What would that be, I asked. Well, poverty. We both care about helping poor people. Let me ask you this then, I said. Would most of the folks at the Multnomah Bible College be supportive of Mr. Bush and his policies? Yes, he said, I think you could safely say that. Well then, wouldn't that be just a bit of a contradiction, I answered. Well, I'll have to agree with you there, said Metzger, and then he asked, look, are you still going to speak? Your name is on the program. Yes, I said, I'm going to speak, but it'll be hard for me to speak, and I will have to say why it is so hard. He seemed relieved that I would at least show up, and we ended the conversation amicably. Since that time, I was awakened in the middle of the night on 2 different occasions, and both times got up and wrote a speech and then tore up both copies. I tried a 3rd time, and that was the speech that I finally gave yesterday. This speech was not just a rhetorical challenge, you see, but it was a spiritual challenge. I was challenged to be loving and compassionate and open-minded toward the very people who are the strongest supporters of the present administration in Washington, one that has trashed everything I have ever worked for in my life. You've got to understand that I am a fighter by nature, and now I was being asked to walk into the enemy camp and to be nice. Why was it so hard for me? Where were the anger and the fear coming from? I needed to look inside myself and try to find out. First of all, I found the wounds from 2 childhood religions, Catholic and Southern Baptist, both of whom told me when I was just a child that I was going to hell if I didn't sign up with them. And then there was the way I was rejected as a sinner by the Baptists when I got a divorce. I shared those personal bonds with the Bible College yesterday, not in an angry way, but I shared my pain, my hurt. I came from my heart. But there is more than my personal pain here. I can't talk about these issues in some cool cerebral way, some emotionally detached way. You see, a person's theology is not just some nice idea that he or she holds in a vacuum. A person's theology determines how that person treats others. Maybe others of a different skin color determines how that person makes ethical decisions. It determines that person's politics. For example, if one believes that gays and lesbians are sinners, then that sets up a context, a cultural milieu in which God himself disapproves of gays and lesbians, sanctioning from heaven itself the violence that might be done to them, the perpetrators then left unhindered by good people. It's that context that strung Matthew Shepard out on the fence to die in Laramie, Wyoming, strung out like Jesus hanging on the cross. So yes, it was hard for me to speak. I told them that yesterday. I reminded them of ballot measure 9, designed to remove civil liberties from gays and lesbians, a ballot measure so strongly supported by Christians in Oregon. I told them how gays and lesbians from my church were frightened by the hate and violence during that time, and how sometimes they would come through the line to greet me after the sermon, and I would hold them weeping in my arms. I said, "You hurt them, and when you hurt my people, you hurt me." But this conference was about healing. So how could we come together? I decided that the best preparation was for me to reread the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, to remind myself of the words of Jesus, because Jesus is what I have in common with the Multnomah Bible College. I love Jesus, and so do they. But the question is, who is this Jesus that we both love? So I entitled my speech, "Will a Real Jesus Please Stand Up?" More about this later. Today, I want to explore with you the dangers of ideology, not just religious ideology, but any kind of ideology. We can all fall into a kind of narrowness of thinking. That's true of the left as well as the right. There are some publications on the left, for example, that I will not read just because they are so predictable. Ideology is a predictable way of looking at a given subject matter. It brooks no dissent. It is not open to doubt or correction. We must understand that any idea or concept is merely an arbitrary way of viewing problems or situation. A concept is a tool for understanding, not the truth itself. But the temptation is to reify a given concept, that is to say, to treat an abstract idea as though it were something concrete or real. We do this because we want to make sense of our world. We want to move from confusion and chaos to this world, to some container of wisdom that will somehow make our lives have meaning and purpose. And so we may become a true believer, one who gives full and unquestioning allegiance to a nation, a religious belief, or a political ideal. We are especially vulnerable to adopting a ruling ideology when we are feeling frightened or weak, or when our life seems to spin out of control or is yawning before us with no meaning. Writer Susan Griffin, in her essay, "The Way of All Ideology," speaks of what happens to an individual who denies self and embraces an idea. I can be angry, I can hate, I can rage, but the moment I have defined another being as my enemy, I lose part of myself, the complexity and the subtlety of my vision. I begin to exist in a closed system. When anything goes wrong, I blame my enemy. If I wake troubled, my enemy had led me to this feeling. Slowly, All the power in life begins to be located outside, and my whole being is defined in relation to this outside force, which becomes daily more monstrous, more evil, more laden with all the qualities in myself I no longer wish to own. The quality of my thought then is diminished. My imagination grows small. Myself seems meager, for my enemy has stolen all these. Way back in 1951, a longshoreman named Eric Hoffer, a self-taught intellectual and writer, published a book called The True Believer. It's a classic statement of the making of an ideologue. Hoffer points out that more than anything else, people need hope in their lives. They need meaning. He believes that as the cultural patterns that have held people weaken, people become fearful and conditions become ripe for the rise of a mass movement and the establishment of a new form of unity. The rise of the Nazi Party is an obvious example. The relief of the true believer does not come from new strength and wisdom, but from a sense of deliverance from the burdens of an autonomous existence, says Hoffer. The success of any given movement depends upon not the truth of its doctrine, but rather by its organizational machine. That is, how easily are people drawn in and kept in. I see wisdom in his words for our day. As I look upon our contemporary scene, I see technology changing our lives at an alarming rapid rate, including biotechnology, which is fussing around with the very nature of life itself. I see family structures breaking apart and coming together in new forms. I see women and minority groups claiming their power and dignity and demanding the quality promised them by the radical freedom articulated by our founders. All of this change is unnerving and unsettling. It's easy to see why fundamentalist religion has taken hold so powerfully in this country. And it is easy to see how the religious right has become so influential in American life and politics. Its organizational machine is formidable indeed, and it has struck a strong chord of fear. Hoffer also comments on the relationship of violence to fanaticism. Violence intensifies, invigorates the faith of the true believers, and the more bloody they shed, and the more blood they shed, the more they need to believe that their principles are absolutes. Only the self-righteous that come with the absolute truth can absolve them of the spilling of blood. Think crusades, think divine right of the first settlers in this country. Let me go back for a moment now to my speech at the Multnomah Bible College. What was so terrifying for me in taking on this task is that I was afraid that I might dehumanize the Bible college folks, might make them into the other, and not me. And I knew that it would be a spiritual trap, that it would negate any good I might bring to the conversation. So where could I find a heart big enough, loving enough, compassionate enough to be with them yesterday without my body armor? Just a human being struggling to make my life meaningful, just as they were. That's why I talked about Jesus. I know I touched a few hearts, and I know I was touched by the other presenters. So the experience that I dreaded turned out to be a blessing, not just in being there in that setting, but in the self-examination I was forced to do and in the thinking I did about our own faith. Are we true believers? Well, I am aware that I have given myself to something larger than myself. Furthermore, I have often suggested to you that this is the way of freedom and light and peace. So how are we different from Eric Hoffer's true believer? I think there is a difference. As Unitarian Universalists, we give ourselves over to relationship with the holy. We know that revelation is not sealed, that truth is ever evolving, and so we wish to learn and grow. We obey no authority higher than the dictates of our own conscience. We refuse to suppress our creativity, our imagination, and our rational minds to follow any individual or adhere to any doctrine. Furthermore, we choose not to escape an autonomous existence, not to escape our individuality, but in fact to develop that individuality as deeply and richly as we possibly can. Yes, we do find meaning in commitment and in community. Yes, we do find meaning in group activities here at church, everything from choirs to peace marches. But we ask ourselves, to what end is this organization given? What is our mission? Am I contributing to the greater good? In this group, am I respected as an individual, or am I required to conform to structures or beliefs which are alien to my nature? I stand before you today saying unequivocally, quoting Jesus of the scriptures, which I have been reading, as you know, that you must lose your life in order to find it. But this statement is not true because Jesus said it. Rather, Jesus said it because it's true. In other words, truth comes to us not through the authority, but through the divine spark within each of us. And if we lose ourselves, we do not lose ourselves to a movement, to an idea, to a species nationalism, or to any construct that would impose upon us a truth that is not our own. We lose ourselves, I hope, to the Spirit in whatever manifestation we are led. We judge the rightness of our motives and actions by the fruits thereof. Are we serving the greater good? Is the world a more loving place because we are in it? Is kindness a greater virtue to us than being right? Are we growing in our ability to forgive ourselves and others? We walk this road of life, and it is lonely, save for those who walk with us. These friends in the faith help us by their affirming presence to unfold and to become true, not to another, not to an idea, but at the ground, at the root, true to ourselves and to our God. So be it. Amen. However, last night I went onto her website just to see, and so I came across her last blog that she did in 2012. So this was 7 years later, and she titled it, "Saying Goodbye to Tolerance." Bing. Right? I am a Unitarian Universalist, and we consider ourselves the most tolerant of faiths. In the 19th century, Universalist churches were known for opening their doors to dissenters of all varieties, and our modern day UU churches have continued to provide space for those who cannot find a welcome mat elsewhere: atheists and agnostics, religious humanists, political dissidents. We UUs see ourselves as broad-minded and so tend to say things like, there is truth in every religious tradition. We respect all religious beliefs. In one of our services, you might hear a reading from the Bible, but just as likely from the Quran, Black Elk, Lao Tse, or Starhawk. However, in spite of our long history and tradition of tolerance, I am finding myself increasingly intolerant, specifically of the theology and practice of many evangelical Christians. So we have time, so I'm going to read this, the rest of it. I say this with some real sorrow, some measure of guilt. I was brought up Southern Baptist, and the church nurtured me and cared for me as I grew up without a mother in a small town in North Louisiana. I owe that church a lot. Some of my relatives remain in fundamentalist evangelical churches. A professor at a local conservative evangelical seminary has reached out to me in friendship and has asked me several times to speak to his world religion class. He published my response to one of his essays in a recent book on Christology. He is a good man. He wants his students to know that our world is multicultural and to understand and respect the different faiths, that ethnic groups that they will encounter in the real world outside the seminary. He and I have had long theological conversations over coffee, and because of his progressive beliefs about environmental issues, I suggested him as a speaker at our UU National Conference a few years ago, where he was well received. Last time my friend asked me to speak, however, I refused. I find myself in the strange position of being liberal who is closed in relationship with a theologically conservative evangelical who is open. I'm having to ask myself why. I thought about my visits with his students over the past few years. To me, seminary is a place where students open themselves to new ideas, where they question received beliefs. Seminary changes people who attend, sometimes radically. When I visited my friend's class, I did not try to convince students that Unitarian Universalism was the faith they should adopt. I just gave a review of our history and tradition. But as I have tried to explain to my friend during those visits, I always felt like an insect under glass. The students were unfailingly polite. They smiled, they were not confrontive in the least. The closest comment that came to confrontation was the honest, halting expression of one young woman who closed out the discussion by saying, I just wish you believed more like I do. I could see that she was concerned for me, maybe concerned even for my soul, which she had no doubt thought would be burning in hell upon my demise. Each time I visited, I went away depressed and discouraged. I wanted curiosity, passionate discussion, even a reasoned rejection. Instead, the students put up a glass shield I couldn't penetrate. But my classroom experience is not the only reason I have lost tolerance for this brand of Christianity. Conservative evangelical Christians are sure that they are right about so much, but from my vantage point, much of what they believe is unloving and in fact destructive. I'm thinking about my two nephews. One is a handsome, talented, funny, warm human being who happens to be gay. His older brother is also handsome and talented, but he is a jock sports star and businessman. And in his case, a conservative Christian who lives in the deep South. The older brother will not speak to his younger brother, nor allow his 4 children to see their uncle, presumably because they might be adversely influenced. The brother's attention is deeply hurtful to my sister, the boy's mother. The older brother's attitudes are culturally influenced in a religion that is profoundly, fervently conservative, both socially and theologically. Of even more concern is the preponderance of hate crimes being committed against gays and other minorities. There were 6,628 hate crimes reported in 2010, last year, that it was available. 47% race-related, 20% religion, 19% sexual orientation, 13% ethnicity or national origin. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, 1,018 active hate groups were operating in the United States in 2011, a 60% increase since 2000. Is it fair to blame these crimes on conservative Christianity? Not directly. No doubt the great majority of people who commit hate crimes would not call themselves Christian of any variety. Indeed, conservative Christians typically say that although they may disagree with sexual orientation or religion of another, they hate the sin and love the sinner. In fact, they may go so far as to say that they themselves are sinners saved by grace. However, I would maintain that these Christians, almost all of whom condemn gays for loving differently, support and perpetuate the milieu in which hate crimes take place. They contribute immensely to the cultural ground out of which prejudice grows and flourishes. Ministers, respected authority figures in conservative evangelical churches and related institutions all over the country are preaching their theology of singularity. To be sure, some evangelicals, just as my friend, the seminary professor, are encouraging their people to be more like Jesus in terms of social justice and to be more protective of God's green earth. These new evangelicals are a growing subset of evangelicals who are changing the religious conversation in conservative circles. But my friend is a theological conservative. And so far as I know, all conservative evangelicals believe there is but one way to salvation, through faith in Jesus as your personal savior. That stance turns everyone else into an infidel, an unbeliever, a moral pervert, a sinner doomed by God to everlasting punishment. So if these others are offending God by their sins and are on their way to hell, what covert permission is given to those inclined to act violently on their prejudices? Oppression could be thought of as on a continuum, with one end of that continuum being genocide and the other being more acceptable forms like jokes making fun of minorities, women, and gays. Somewhere in the middle of this silence, somewhere in the middle is the silence, the refusal to speak out against prejudice, of which Martin Luther King said the following: history will have to record that the greatest tragedy was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. Closing paragraph. All religious traditions are not equal. Some beliefs foster freedom, growth, and a deepening of compassion. Others are rigid and exclusive, warning of eternal punishment for those who don't believe in the one true path of salvation as they see it, for those who love someone of the same sex. For the personal support the church of my childhood gave me, I remain thankful. I am sure many conservative evangelicals today feel similar gratitude for their community, but for the damage that conservative Christianity does to people and for its perpetuation of prejudice and hate, I must reject this tradition. I believe those who teach it and preach it are doing great harm, and in no way I wish to be an ally. Thank you.
The morning offering will now be given and received. Please remember, we are a self-sustaining congregation and provide all financial resources for our many ministries. We recognize the spiritual value of generosity and invite you to participate. If you are viewing the service remotely, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Please stand in body and or spirit and sing the closing hymn, Let This Be a House of Peace, hymn number 1054.
Let this be a house of peace, of nature and humanity, of sorrow and elation. Let this be our house, a haven for the healing, an open room for question and our inspiration. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of freedom, guardian of dignity and worth held deep inside us. Let this be our house, a platform for the free voice, where all our sacred differences here shall not divide us. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let all in this house seek truth, where scientists and mystics abide in reverence here. Let this be our house, a house of our creation, where works of art and melodies consecrate the atmosphere. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be a house of prophecy. May visions for our children be our common theme. Let this be our house of myth and lore and legend, our trove of ancient story and cradle of our tender dreams. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace. Let this be a house of peace. Let this be our house of peace.
Extinguish the chalice. Let us recite the valediction. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As the chalice flame is extinguished, we shall carry its glow onward. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond. Please extinguish your chalice at home now. Now let's form a circle and join hands, and Dolores will deliver the benediction.
Here, you can feel like Charlie. And now, as you leave this holy place, know that you carry all the truth, all the wisdom you need in your own person. Trust the divine presence within. Go in love, go in peace. Amen.